Spill the beans, man. What happened last week? Why do you stop people? Why couldn't people buy the GameStop shares?
We have to put up money based on some factors. There's a component which is value at risk, and then there's a special component which is discretionary.
Discretionary meaning like it's just their opinion.
Yeah.
And who are these people that are?
It's a consortium. It's not quite a government agency. I don't really know the details of all of that.
You were mentioning that it was convoluted on purpose.
It's insane, dude. It's like the Federal Express, which I don't know if they really wanted you to think it was actually a federal company, but of course the Federal Reserve, also not a federal company, an arm of the Bank of International Settlements, a Swiss bank, one of many central banks throughout the world, like the Bank of England and the Bank of Australia, that are not governed by their government.
This is Ian's time to shine.
Hello.
The Federal Reserve, all this stuff. That's what I was thinking when I looked at NSCC. I was like, wait, is this not? What is this entity? It's not regulated. It's not part of the government. It's a private entity. What is this? NSCC is actually a private entity, a subsidiary of the DTCC.
The request was around $3 billion. It's a big number. Like $3 billion is a large number, right?
What everyone wants to know is like, did something maybe shady go down here?
If they do have a liquidity problem, why can't you just simply come out and say that rather than use weasel words that will cause people to assume the worst of you based on your financial relationship with Citadel, who has a financial interest in Melvin Capital, who is about to go bankrupt from shorting the shares of stock that you just disabled trading on?
I think it's Citadel is the name of the fund.
Yes.
That owns about 30% of them. And they were one of these hedge funds who had been shorting GameStop. So it seems much more likely.
Robinhood stands for everyday investors. And we've gotten a lot of criticism that, maybe there should be more restrictions.
Who is making that criticism? Not one of the hundreds of thousands of negative app reviews was made because people think you aren't being restrictive enough. Nobody is begging you for a stronger iron fist, except for a very fringe but potentially very influential few. Who would these people be? Well, they can only be one of two: powerful elites in government or powerful elites in finance, who don't take kindly to the little guy beating them at their own game. And the fact that this CEO would reference them, despite the peasantry storming his castle gate with pitchforks and torches, at least implies to me that some of these few are in his ear with particularly loud voices.
They said that there are requirements. The SEC, capital obligations, clearinghouse deposits, they had to do it, right? They just said in an email to me, Tim, you moron, the game is rigged. We're telling you it's rigged. When the game is set up in such a way that you benefit, the SEC requires us to jam.
That seems another one of those misinformation and conspiracy theories. Certainly, we made decisions based on the financial requirements, including SEC net capital obligations and clearinghouse deposits.
But they said they're obligated to the SEC.
But they didn't say for what. It's a manipulation tactic.
But they did something, and then they said we're obligated to the SEC to behave in this fashion.
We're obligated to provide certain things. So they didn't say the SEC actually told us to do anything. It's a trick. It's a way they twist language to make you assume. It's a manipulation technique.
Seems weird that you'd get a sudden $10 billion demand,
$3 billion.
3 in the morning. Sorry, how much?
Yeah. It was $3 billion US dollars.
$3 billion. Okay. $3 billion.
Yeah, around.
Just suddenly out of nowhere. And what percentage of that
I wouldn't impute shadiness to it or anything like that.
This has been unprecedented activity concentrated in a few names.
Basically, there was another call and they lowered it to something like $1.4 billion from 3.
Our team is in constant communication with our regulators.
We proposed marking these volatile stock position closing only.
When you finally find a way to win, they shut you down. Now, initially, I titled this podcast, it was the feds. Why? Because the initial story that I had said federal regulator intervenes. And turns out, apparently the NSCC, which is the principal clearinghouse for stocks, told Robinhood, the trading app, that they had to deposit $3 billion, security deposit. And when they eventually negotiated down saying we can't do that, they said 700 million. I believe it was 700, maybe actually I believe it was 700 million, but you also have to freeze these stocks.
Even if I buy his stated explanation that volatility puts the company in a difficult position operationally, his moves still don't make any sense and imply the worst may actually be true. If things are too volatile, why not suspend all transactions temporarily? If your company needs a minute to collect itself, why not just take a minute to collect yourself and step away entirely, instead of banning only specific targeted transactions? And why just one type of transaction? The company only banned GameStop buys.
They came back and they said, okay, the charge is, or the deposit, 700 million, which we then deposited and paid promptly, and then everything was fine. We knew this was a bad outcome for customers.
Have you gotten calls from the SEC?
Well, the SEC indicated late last week that it's monitoring developments, and I think that's extremely important in the current situation. Some of the issues that you were just chatting about, namely the capital needs of Robinhood and the necessity and the possible necessity of the trading limits that they imposed, are certainly something the commission staff ought to be getting a handle on and understanding.
And to be fair, like, these are unprecedented events with these meme stocks, and there was a lot of activity, so there probably is some amount of extra risk in the system.
So they shorted 140% of the stock. So it was a huge amount. It was more than all.
I know it was more than 100%. I didn't know the 140% number.
So that's why even a small amount is going to screw people enormously.
Exactly.
All right. So it sounds like this organization, calls you up and they basically have a gun to your head. Did you sell your clients down the river, or did you have no choice? And if you had no choice, that's understandable. But then, we got to find out why you had no choice. And who are these people that are saying you have no choice?
I think that's fair. We have to comply with these requirements. Financial institutions have requirements.
We really need to find out, why. I mean, he basically lied on national television for literally no apparent reason, or maybe there is a reason.
Well, here's what's so sketchy about it. Who are they raising money from?
Yeah.
A lot of it is hedge funds who need to cover their short positions. Mm-hmm. And so, to me, it was, let's just say, incredibly shady that at the same time that they shut down the ability to buy the stock, not to sell it, you can still sell it, but to buy the stock. And even I saw some indications that they were selling people's positions without them wanting them to, at the same time that they're taking in billions of dollars in new capital from these hedge funds. Almost seems like
market makers execute our trades. They execute trades of every broker dealer. This was a clearinghouse decision, and it was just based on the capital requirements. So, Citadel and other market makers weren't involved in that.
But wouldn't they have a strong say in who got put in charge of that organization, since it's an industry consortium, not a government regulatory agency?
I don't have any reason to believe that. Then you're getting into kind of the conspiracy theories a little bit.
Okay. All right.
That did not happen. Hopefully I'm being clear about that. Nobody pressured us. We didn't do this at the direction of a market maker that we route our orders to.
Even if you put Robinhood aside, and even if you give them the benefit of the doubt, how they were just facing this liquidity issue and they didn't know how to deal with it, and they're just in over their heads,
Robinhood was not the only broker that restricted buying of these securities.
Other stock brokerages did also suspend GameStop and other stock buys, but not everybody did, and the restrictions weren't uniform. Each brokerage's policies were a little bit different. If the government wanted to stomp out gamestonk, the boot would be much larger, instead of a special boot just for Robinhood.
So think of it from the point of view of the brokerage, right? Especially if people are selling stocks short, which has the potential for unlimited losses. If your client goes bust and enough of your clients goes bust, then the brokerage goes bust.
Every other major trading platform did the same thing.
Yes.
So did they all have this sudden, at the same time, synchronized, massive liquidity issue?
Then you're getting into kind of the conspiracy theories a little bit.
Okay. All right.
You're going to own nothing. You're going to be happy. You're not going to own a car. You won't own a house. Good luck. You might not own stock. You're not going to own a business. You won't own your own body soon. This is the future. And I've never been more convinced of it than spending time on that app. And the app is fun. It's fun hearing how it's going to happen. Isn't that sick?
The financial system that allows customers to trade shares is sort of a complex web of multiple parties. And, it's hard to, I think everyone says, oh, it could be better, it could be improved. It's just the necessity of trading equities in the U.S. that you have to do all these things.
Idea that the Wall Street complex has anything to do with laissez-faire market organic capitalism is complete nonsense. It is a complete government program. It's all run by the Federal Reserve. It's all the big banks are propped up by the Federal Reserve, which is they pretend to be a private company. The Federal Reserve is the government Department of Money and Banking, and they just claim to be a private company so they don't even have to deal with any of the oversight, but that a department of government would have to go through.
When, your retail investors and the people at home are winning, this just seems to be the signal to me that you're at the end of the party. Even just the fact that you have a climate for this is because so many people are forced to put their money into these brokerage accounts and try and trade for themselves just to get returns. So a lot of the fact that you even have a market climate where people are attracted to the casino like this is because of everything that the Fed has done.
Yeah.
Is it systemic risk? Well, that's why we're worried that the center will not hold and the entire market could collapse.
Yes. The 1-2 punch of the ocean of liquidity provided by the Federal Reserve, combined with this strategy of buying out-of-the-money calls, has proven very effective.
Raises all sorts of new questions about whether there's a systemic issue underneath the system and underneath the company unto itself.
No.
So, but if I'm borrowing this share from somebody, they don't get any of the money?
No, because they're charging you juice to borrow it. Or if they're your broker, they're lending it out to you without any juice.
The ocean of liquidity provided by the Federal Reserve.
Believe it or not, you can sometimes trade stocks with borrowed money.
The ocean of liquidity provided by the Federal Reserve.
People used to put their money in savings accounts. Your grandparents kept change. They kept jars of change around because that was like their mentality. Like, you save money, that's money, and you save it. Now, if we lived in an economy with normal interest rates, a lot of people, if they were looking to make a profit off their money, they can save their money, they can make modest investments. But when it's at zero interest rates, then what do you do if you want to make money?
The ocean of liquidity provided by the Federal Reserve, combined with this strategy of buying out-of-the-money calls, has proven very effective.
No one knows what the Fed is. No one knows how the Federal Reserve
It's
works.
sad and true, man.
Investors focus on the Fed and the interest rates that they set. But if you turn on like CNBC or you read the Wall Street Journal, it's never like a broader philosophical discussion about the Federal Reserve and what impact that actually has on markets. It's always like very kind of short-sighted, well, if the Fed raises rates, the market will be worse tomorrow. You could talk about the fact that hedge funds are manipulating markets, or you could talk about the fact that platforms like Robinhood are shutting down, the people's ability to buy the GameStop stock, and it's not, I'm not even saying like none of these are problems. Certainly I think they are, and they can have negative effects, but none of that really gets at the core of what's going on. The fact is, the real fraud is what the Fed is doing to our money. That's the real fraud. That's really stealing from the American people.
It's not this like vast conspiracy. This is how these fuckers make their money.